Depreciation is one of the major costs that comes with owning a sports car, and some models are notorious for crazy high depreciation rates, costing owners tens and thousands of dollars.
Luckily, there are also models with lower depreciation or no depreciation at all.
The Porsche Cayman is one of them, but even in this market, there are some premature signs of cracking price trends.
Welcome to the market update for the Porsche Cayman.
In this video, you'll get updated on the latest price trends in the Cayman market and get to know how the depreciation rates compare to other cars.
Now, last week we checked out the price trends in the Porsche Boxster market, so go check out that video if you prefer the Boxsters. This also means that there has been a lot of Porsche content lately. I know that some of you love it, while others prefer to see other brands as well. So next week we'll have a look at a different, more affordable brand.
Let's continue now by investigating the latest trends in the Cayman market. We start with the 718s. Over here we have the price trends for the base, S and GTSs. This shows that prices have been trending lower since the pandemic price top in the summer of 2022, but they have been doing so at a modest pace. Especially if we look at the base and S markets, which are the largest ones, we can see a slight flattening of the curve during 2023. This means that base models lost 5.2% during last year, S's 5% and GTS's 5.7%. In monetary terms, we're talking about minus 2.7, minus 3.6 and minus $4,700. All of these numbers and also the numbers in the rest of the video are before inflation adjustments. Now, Porsche announced a big price jump for 2024 for the 718s, and this might be an explanation for the strong prices that we're seeing. The data does then also display a price increase for the relatively new cars, meaning the ones between 0 and 7,000 miles.
Let's continue now with the 981s. I will cover the GTs and the 4-liter GTSs at the end.
Over here we have the price trends for the 981 base, S and GTSs. Similar to the 718s, we can see that trends flattened during 2023. In terms of depreciation, we're looking at minus 4.8% in the base market, minus 4.1% in the S market, and plus 1.8% in the GTS market. But we need to interpret this latter number with care. The GTS is becoming a rarity, with anywhere between 0 and 10 cars for sale during last year. The uncertainty in the plus 1.8% is therefore large. I would rely on the minus 4.1% in the S market. This change is statistically confirmed, meaning that it's unlikely to be the result of chance.
The 987 is even more problematic, as supply is low in many of the subsegments.
Over here we have the price trend split by the .1s and .2s and the base, S and R models. I know that there are many lines over here, but I would like to focus on the .1S trend, so the orange one. This is by far the largest market and most likely gives us the best estimate of what's happening. Looking at last year, we can see that prices are down by 3.2%. The second largest market is the one of the .1 base models. Over here we can observe a price change of 0.1%. It probably doesn't come as a surprise that both of these changes aren't statistically confirmed and can be the result of chance. Yet, we'll use them as a proxy for the .2 market. Price trends in that market really should be interpreted with care. We can see, for example, a slowly declining trend in the .2R market, but this is mainly driven by 1 or 2 cars which are decreased in price after they didn't sell within 3 months.
And that brings us to the latest 6-cylinders, the 4-liter GTSs, the GT4 RSs and the GT4s.
Over here we have the trend for the 981 and 718 GT4s and the 718 4-liter GTS. Similar to the rest of the market, all cars corrected in the second half of 2022. GT4s, however, bounced back to approximately 50% of the correction, while 4-liter GTSs remained flat. This means that 718 GT4s lost 1.8%, 981s 0.3%, and 4-liter GTSs 3.2%. But again, none of these changes are statistically confirmed. The trends, however, reveal that the bounce is clearly over. The year-over-year change is flat or negative, whereas it was mainly positive in the previous market update. The graph also reveals that 4-liter GTSs and 981 GT4s are priced approximately the same. Purely from a depreciation perspective, the GT4 seems to be the more sensible choice. It belongs to the elite group of cars for which prices actually bounced back and for which prices are, even after inflation correction, still at the same level as in the beginning of 2022. And that brings us to the GT4 RS. MSRP starts at $161,000, but if you add some options, you can easily reach the $200,000 mark. Now, based on the current median price of $243,000, one could say that prices are strong, but they're not. This is often causing a lot of confusion. We can see namely that the price premium is reducing quickly. Compared to last year, prices are down by 16.2% or $47,000. But the trend is starting to flatten, and the year-over-year change decreased compared to the previous market update. So these cars are slowly starting to find their price level. At the same time, it's also visible in the data that cars that don't sell within 3 months are discounted less than 1 year ago.
We covered now a lot of numbers, so let's put them all together in one graph and deduce some insights.
We can see now that the average depreciation rate was 3.8% and that this was 2.7% if we exclude the GT4 RSs. Most cars, however, lost between 3.5 and 5.7%. Very respectable numbers. The GT4s remain the best performing cars in terms of depreciation. That's not a surprise, as they have been at the top of the leaderboards for a long time. The 981 GTS also performs well, but remember that just as in the 987 base market, the uncertainty in this estimate is relatively high.
Now, in the market update from February, I revealed that there was one indicator that was pointing towards a potential softening of the market.
That indicator is the carried over inventory. It's the percentage of cars that aren't sold within 3 months. In February we saw that the downward trend in the carried over inventory broke for the first time since 2022, and that values increased rapidly. This means that cars sold slower than before.
The main message of that video was that downside price risk increased and that it's worthwhile to monitor the situation closely.
So did the depreciation rate accelerate? Over here we have the yearly depreciation rates of February 2024 and May 2024, so the ones we just saw. This reveals that the depreciation rates indeed increased in most segments. The average rate, excluding the GT4 RSs, was -1%, while it currently sits at -2.7%. This means that all models depreciated more, with exception of the GT4 RS, 987 base and 981 GTS. But I would only trust the number of the GT4 RS.
But there's a caveat here. We need to check if this increase of 1.7 percentage points is a real increase.
It turns out it's not, and that it simply could be the result of chance. Excluding the GT4 RSs, we can only state that the 718 market softened slightly, as that's the only segment where tests indicate that the changes are unlikely to be the result of chance. Looking at the chart, we can see then also relatively large changes for the base, S and 4-liter GTS models.
Now, despite the softening in the 718s, the general Cayman market is relatively strong. Let me show you how it stacks up.
Over here we have the US year-over-year price changes for almost all cars that feature on my channel. On the horizontal axis we have the price change compared to last year in percentages, and on the vertical axis we have the number of cars to which this change applies. The average decrease during last year was 7%, and most cars lost between 11 and 2%. With rates of -4% for the 718s excluding the GT4 RSs, -1.6% in both the 981 and 987 markets, the Caymans performed better than the average. The 981 and 987 even fall in the top 25% of cars that lost the least. The GT4 RS, on the other hand, falls in the top 25% of cars that lost the most. Let's wrap up now.
We saw that the Porsche Cayman market softened slightly, but that it still very much belongs to the group of markets that outperformed the general market. If you are shopping in this segment and care about depreciation, it's hard to ignore the Cayman.
It's one of the most financially savvy purchases you can make. Values decreased by an average of 2.7%, excluding the GT4 RS. And this is less than the market average. GT4s were even flat during last year, after they bounced back from a correction in the second half of 2022.
Now, these price trends contain some information about short-term future prices, meaning that the most likely scenario is that we'll see a continuation of the current price trends.
Unfortunately, we cannot predict the long term with any degree of certainty without an evidence-based model.
And with that we arrived at the end of this video. Now, if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car prices, but would like to see a video for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you'll find data-driven market update for a large variety of cars. Over here you can find, for example, the market update for the Porsche Boxsters, and over here you can find the ones for the 911 Carreras. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week for a new video.